It's midweek. Hello and welcome to Business Live. In our headlines tonight, government advised to cut down on its expenditure to help mobilize revenue. We'll hear from an economist on his expectations ahead of the 2023 budget presentation.
We should see some revenue measures. We really need to raise more revenue, so there's no question about that. Then we also have to see some action on the expenditure side. At the very least, we should hear how government is going to spend a little bit more efficiently than it's done in the past.
Also ahead of the presentation, we will engage accounting and auditing firm PwC on their expectations amid the current economic crisis. Plus, tackling post-harvest losses, how Pure and Just Company is processing fresh fruits into dried fruit products.
We suffer from post-harvest losses in Ghana a lot. Surprisingly, especially the mango season, it will surprise you to know that we have just 2 mango seasons in Ghana. And during the major season, we have a bumper harvest. And it's for a period of 3 months, and we can't consume all, processing companies cannot buy all. So we have a lot of post-harvest losses.
We've got details of these and many others shortly. Please stay. And those were your commodities update. Grateful you could stay on. I am Pious Kojo Backah, and look now at our stories. An economist is urging government to come out with some expenditure cutting measures so as to shore up revenue. According to Dr. Patrick Esumen, there is also the need for the government to identify and plug all loopholes in the country's tax system. He spoke on the marketplace ahead of the 2023 budget presentation.
There are other means that the government should focus on. We finally passed the exemption bill. Let's hope that we are actually doing something to recruit more revenue from there. We also have the property taxes, which, by the way, is more progressive. And then, we know that there are a lot of loopholes. There are a lot of loopholes in our tax system. And then we do have a lot of illicit financial outflow from the country. So I think at this moment, maybe we should focus on those measures and making sure that we are collecting the revenues more efficiently. But to raise the VAT rate at this point I think it won't be a very good idea at all. We should see some revenue measures. We really need to raise more revenue, so there's no question about that. Then we also have to see some action on the expenditure side. At the very least, we should hear how government is going to spend a little bit more efficiently than it's done in the past. And then we do hope that, the rate of increase in government expenditure is way lower than what we've seen in the past, if not even a decline. Well, as to whether that will come by cutting the size of government or reducing some of its programs or, reducing the pegs to government officials, it's not, it's up to the government. But I think we have to see that the government is showing some true commitment to reduce the size of its expenditure. So that one is important. Then, I think we have to see that we have to move beyond just the fiscal side. Beyond this, the economy has to grow and the economy has to do well. And we need to restructure the economy. So beyond the attempt to try and bring some sanity to government finances, we really have to see a strategic shift in terms of how we are going to restructure the economy going forward.
And we know that the 2023 budget will be read by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta tomorrow in Parliament. Now, the budget will be hinged on an expected program from the International Monetary Fund. Ahead of the budget, there had been several propositions by business groups, civil society organizations, and other organizations. One of such firms is accounting and auditing firm PwC. Joining us is a tax partner, Abeku Jan Kwansa. Good evening, Abeku, and grateful you could join us on Business Live. What has PwC been proposing for government in the 2023 budget?
All right, so good evening to you, and good evening to everyone that is listening in and watching this Business Live program. Obviously, as a consulting firm and as one that is keen on helping this country address its major issues, we do collect views from our clients and share those views with government as part of the consultative process to preparing the budget every year. This year, we submitted tons and tons and tons of suggestions for government to consider. And some of those, which I believe are key for the purpose of our conversation, relates to proposals on VAT. We made proposals on the informal sector. We've also made proposals on even dealing with the whole issue around benchmarks. And then lastly, we've asked government to reconsider its view on dispute resolution. So we've done so many presentations, we've done so many proposals to government, but the four key ones that we are proposing, once again, are really looking at the VAT regime, reconsidering the whole issue around benchmarks, looking at our dispute resolution mechanism process, and lastly, trying to share some ideas with government on how to bring in the informal sector.
I want you to touch on the VAT regime because it has been a major concern to businesses. What has been the proposal on VAT regime?
All right, so our view is that the VAT regime that we currently have is not business friendly. The regime is not one that encourages people to comply with the laws. So probably if you have followed the news this afternoon, you would have heard, for example, Twitter complaining that when you get into a market, there are about 3 different types of VAT schemes being operated. So you have a flat rate, you have a standard rate, and something that I may call low rates as far as VAT is concerned. Our view to government is that the current regime is too complicated. Can we simplify the process by introducing a threshold beyond which every kind of person that does a VAT transaction charges standard rate VAT? And if you are within a range, it's a flat rate. So the current complication that we have is government saying that under certain circumstances, if you are a retailer and you do not have supplies exceeding a certain amount, you would be placed as a flat rate operator. That retailer's supplies values may just change from one period to the other. And that particular person may become a standard rate operator, and that is confusing. The whole issue around the VAT plus the levies have also created so many challenges for businesses. What we have been asking government to do is that can we go back to the system whereby there is no denial for levies, and rather government consolidates the levies with the VAT. So the 2 critical points that we've made to government is deal with the complexity of the VAT regime by ensuring that it's as simplified as possible. And then secondly, can we stop denying businesses an opportunity to claim the tax that they incur in making the vatable supplies?
And a bit about the benchmark value.
All right. Now, on the benchmark value, to explain, and I'm sure by now you really understand what is going on. So according to customs themselves, the benchmark value is a risk management tool. It is not the first point of call when I import things into this country. When I import things into this country, the law requires that the first step should be for me to look at how much I really paid for that item or how much the item really cost me. I should add to it the insurance and the freight in getting those items into Ghana. What the custom authority typically do, especially when they deal with those in our markets, is that the moment you bring in things into Ghana, they do have a reference rate, and it is based on that reference rate that you are subject to tax. So sometimes you may have bought certain things which are genuinely far below the reference rates, but taxes are being computed based on the reference rates. The proposals that we have made to government is that, one, can we check whether those reference rates are even current? If they are not current, they ought to be updated. And then two, can we begin training our people and placing a lot more reliance on the amount that is actually incurred to import things into Ghana, rather than always using a reference rate which may not really reflect the price at which those items are purchased. Of course, we do appreciate that some traders may not report the right amount to the customs authorities for the purposes of assessing tax. But the issue there is that the law provides sanctions, penalties, interest for those who are not complying. I am not saying that the GRA currently has the capacity to check every single invoice, but what we are saying here is that we should try and migrate and get our people to do the right thing and rely a lot more on the cost actually incurred, rather than always using a reference rate for those, especially in our markets, and they always would complain and transfer the cost back to the general public. And in our view, because of that procedure, we are not too surprised that the inflation rate, for example, keeps going up and up, because any rational importer would pass those costs to the consumer. So those are the points that we have been making on benchmark. Review it, ensure the prices in there are current, try and place a lot more reliance on the cost actually incurred. And if you have reason to believe that people are using wrong rates, apply the law and get them to do the right thing.
Now, Abeko Jankwansa, I want to find out from you that is there any hope for the economy going into next year based on your outfit's forecast?
Now, based on our forecast, obviously there is hope. We are confident that the budget tomorrow, government having a lot of conversations with the IMF, would pick up certain things and ensure that the hope that we need as a country is available to us all from 2023. As an example, if you follow the case in Zambia, Zambia had similar challenges that we had in Ghana. When they were able to conclude their IMF conversations and started implementing some of the things agreed with the IMF, Zambia's economy is now picking up very positively. So we hope that as soon as we complete our negotiations with the IMF and implement the things that we have agreed, and the government is poised to ensure that the GRA implements the laws as our parliamentarians have passed, we are very hopeful that Ghana would really pick up, and the hope that we are all looking for as citizens is what we would ultimately enjoy.
Well, there have been some proposals, ahead of the budget that we should look at some introduction of taxes, especially in the extractive sector. From what you said, do you foresee any taxes being introduced?
Well, with respect to the extractive sector, I haven't picked up any signals, and by this I'm talking about signals from authoritative sources that there would be incrementing taxes for the extractive sector. However, I do appreciate that so many conversations are going on in this area, and government having looked at how the prices of, say, gold has performed recently, government may decide to go in there. But I would propose that instead of looking at an increase or an introduction of new taxes, government should rather consider implementing the numerous laws that we have that is not being implemented. A case in point, 2 years ago, our parliamentarians passed a law to say that if I disagree with the GRA, there is a procedure that I can go through to ensure timely resolutions of issues that I have with the GRA. It's been 2 years down the line, and we are still waiting for the Ministry of Finance to actually ensure that this thing works. The issue is that if issues are not addressed promptly by the GRA, what actually happens to us as a country is that we have revenue that we expect to get, that we never get. Right. And hence, government will not be able to execute its agenda for the benefit of us all.
All right.
So as a core, we would really plead with the Ministry of Finance to set up the Independent Tax Appeals Board
okay.
as soon as possible to resolve disputes that taxpayers have with GRA, that we can raise the necessary finances.
Grateful. Pious Kojo Backah is a tax partner at PwC, sharing his perspective with us ahead of the 2023 budget presentation. Now, let's move away from that and chat on the story. Chief Economist at Standard Chartered Bank, Razia Khan, is making a strong case for further hike in the Bank of Ghana's policy rate to help check soaring inflation and slow down the depreciation of the cedi. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana is expected to conclude its review of the economy this Friday and announce a new policy rate next week. Speaking to Joy Business in London, the chief economist said a lot more still needs to be done to deal with the recent pressures on the cedi.
It is important for the Bank of Ghana to use whatever tools are available to it. And if that means effecting a deeper tightening, so be it, to try to stabilize the Ghana cedi. For the moment, the authorities' priority should probably be to avoid a situation where that expectation of currency depreciation becomes self-fulfilling. And the only thing they can do in the absence of having actual dollars with which to intervene is to tighten liquidity.
So you think that a policy rate hike will be needed again?
Not just a policy rate hike, but perhaps other means of more blanket tightening, further increases in the cash reserve ratio, do whatever is needed to try to bring liquidity conditions to a point where people don't have an incentive, don't have an expectation that the Ghana cedi is going to continue to weaken. Now that, of course, is difficult because there is a trade-off.
Moving on to some other stories, his chief executive for the Ghana Telecoms Chamber, Engineer Ken Ashigbe, is calling on internal auditors to strengthen their capacity in blocking financial loopholes in the economy. According to a firm, collaboration between managers and auditors can solve many financial malfeasance at various state and private sector organizations in the country. He spoke to Joy Business after addressing the Institute of Internal Auditors workshop on governance in Accra.
The Institute of Internal Auditors organized a workshop on governance for chief executives and senior management members in both public and private sector to equip them on current trends in the business environment. Taking a stand as guest speaker at the workshop, Chief Executive for the Ghana Telecoms Chamber, Engineer Ken Ashigbe, urged internal auditors to collaborate with managers in their various activities. He believes that internal auditors play a critical role in the success of the economy.
The role about the internal auditor is that they are the ones who see a lot of these things before the external auditors come in. So it is critical that internal auditors themselves are abreast with the challenges that are currently confronting us. And it's also important that managers collaborate a lot more with them so that they don't see them as the policeman, but they see them as the people who are required to ensure that they are able to achieve the objects for which they are set up. So there has to be a lot more collaboration between management and the internal auditors.
President of the Institute, Harriet Kakari, told journalists that the workshop is being used as a platform to get members abreast of the current trend.
Because if things are changing, you cannot do business as usual. You cannot do the same thing the same way all the time. So you need to innovate, you need to strategize, you need to elevate corporate sustainability. Find ways to sustain your organization. So that is why we decided to put this program together.
The workshop is under the theme, Elevating Corporate Sustainability.
You're still watching Business Live with me, Pious Kojo Backah. Still to come, tackling post-harvest losses, how Pure and Just companies processing fresh fruits into dried food products.